Every area of oppression in the life of a believer is an area of an ignorance of God, of a dimension of His Spirit. The secret of preservation is captured on the strength of your knowledge of God. Every area of oppression in a man's life is an indicator of a possible ignorance of a dimension of God. The people that do know their God. So the question is not whether you have a God or not. I interact with a lot of people and you hear questions like, if God is there, why is this happening? The problem is not whether God is or not. The problem can be traced to your ignorance. I've gone through pains. I've gone through peril. Why will this be happening? If you say God is real, the problem is not the reality of God. What do you know about God? And what aspect of God do you know that can handle the obvious challenge in your life? Whatever it is that is a challenge is not even an argument whether you have a God or not. All have a God, but the ones that are strong and will do exploit are the ones that do know their God. Many have been deceived by the devil and ran the way of folly, and they call themselves atheists, arguing that there is no God because of challenges in their lives that they could not surmount. The problem is not with God. It is traced to their ignorance of a dimension in God that handles the plague of their lives. So it becomes the responsibility of every Christian to explore God in his lifetime. The greatest preoccupation of any entity in the realms of God is the pursuit of the knowledge of God. So Jesus comes in John 17 verse 3 and he summarizes life. He said, this is life eternal, that they may know Him. Is not a function of what you have. It's a function of your knowledge. Because all things that pertain to life and godliness have been given to us, but it is obtainable only through the ginosko of God. If there is a part of all things that pertains to life and godliness that is lacking in a man's life, the problem is not traced to God. It's traced to what he knows about God. This is life eternal, that they may know Him, the only true God. But the devil is a wicked spirit. Part of the advantages that he has is the fact that he was a creature of the presence. He was a being of the presence. So he understands how to rob a generation of what they have in God. Because he understands the mysteries, the precepts, the patterns, and the principles of God. He is a creature of the presence. He said, where wert thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? When the sons of the morning sang for joy, they watched God carried out some feats of creation. So they understand some of the secret codes that are locked into this world. So when the devil wants to rob a generation of their inheritance, what he advertises to them are pathways that leads to ignorance. The challenge and the plague of the believer is the mountains of ignorance in his life. The moment you know a dimension of God that handles the problem you have, your problem becomes the past. And the reason we preach and keep preaching is to open up the portals of God so that men can know Him and commune with His Spirit. He said, you were in Eden from the day of thy creation until iniquity was found in you. Until iniquity was found in you. He said, out of the multitude of thy merchandise, you corrupted thyself. So he knows what to do to be darkened. There is a multitude of a merchandise that brings about darkness darkness of the soul, and it comes to educate generations upon generation the way of darkness. And we embrace it, and we are separated from the commonwealth of Israel. So in Ephesians 4:18, he said we are alienated from the life of God through the ignorance that is in our hearts, because we have been darkened. Even when the gospel is brought to them, he said, if our gospel be hid, it is hid to them who are lost, whom the God of this world have blinded. What area of your heart is blinded? It is an area that the devil will exploit and exploit again. Resolutions don't bring men to advantage. It is the knowledge of God, because knowledge does not bring knowing. Knowledge brings freedom. He said, and thou shalt know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. The moment knowledge comes, you don't know so much, you become so free. Yeah. You know, our generation is losing out something. We think we know, so we come to talk. The sign that you know is not what you say. The sign that you know is the testimony of how much you have become like God. Because knowledge brings liberty. The man that knows so much, that is not the knowledge of God, his head is lofty. But the man that has the knowledge of God is so free. So free that he can walk through darkness, and it's as if darkness does not exist. The psalmist said, you lead me in the path of righteousness for your name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadows of death, the deepest darkness can no longer hold him back, because he has acquired the knowledge that brings liberty.